Early Birds meets Sunday mornings at 9:30 via Zoom, and the link is on our weekly email and on the website, so please join us. Our upcoming speakers for the rest of the month, next Sunday on the 12th is our own Dr. Edward Burlbaugh, back from a fishing trip. Sounds like he did some pretty good fishing. On the 19th, Reverend Kamatara from Albuquerque will be here. And then on June 26th, the end of the month, Dr. Edward will be our speaker. Want to let everybody know that this Wednesday night is the Wellspring board meeting. We are going to meet via Zoom because we have someone in Colorado, someone at home recuperating from surgery. So we've just decided that we will do a Zoom board meeting at 6:30. And you can get that link from Edward or from the website. From Edward, not the website. Okay, on Thursday evening at 7:30, we have a channeling workshop in the Burlbaugh Social Hall. And if you're not sure what channeling is, whether you can do it or not, or if you're interested in it, please join us. Give it a chance and you will be amazed. There are many different ways of channeling, and just trying to connect with your higher self is also very beneficial. Also on Thursday at 11:30 a.m. at CSL. No, I'm sorry, that's next week. I jumped ahead. The New Thought Ladies Luncheon Potluck will be Thursday, June 23rd at CSL. Next Sunday, on the 12th, Wellspring will be celebrating a quasi-full moon with a barbecue starting at 6 o'clock here, and the church will provide drinks, potato salad, and chips. And if you'd like to bring what you would like to barbecue, please bring that with a lawn chair so you can sit and relax. And if you want, also bring musical instruments, because we're going to have a hoot nanny. As I said last week, that's a cross between an owl and a goat. So we have a hoot nanny. Yeehaw! And lastly, our prayer team remains ready to serve and to support you. You may submit a request via our webpage. Our prayer team meets virtually on Tuesday afternoons at 4:15 to pray with you. And you may consider sitting in a quiet space during that time, because we know that we are one in spirit and that the energy of prayer knows no limit. So now, if you'd like to just get comfortable in your seat, we'll have an invocation. Mother, Father, God, Great Spirit, we are grateful for this time to come together as a Wellspring spiritual community, knowing that you are with us, you are in us, you are around us, and you support each and every one of us on our own spiritual journey. We know that all is good and all is well, and we give great thanks for that. As we say together, and so it is. And now, if you're able, please stand for the Song of Joy by our two lovely gentlemen, Barry and Doug. When I was a kid, I was told if you want to wake up with a smile, go to bed with a hanger in your mouth. Isn't that child abuse? I don't know. Yeah. True. All right, so let's read together our vision, our mission, and our monthly affirmation. Our vision: to elevate spiritual consciousness in our world. Our mission: to support individual spiritual quests through celebration, study, counsel, loving fellowship, and service. And our affirmation: I affirm. Oh, they didn't switch it here. As the summer heats up, I am replenished with the healing waters of love and kindness for myself and others. My faith buoys me to the font of compassion in tough times and joyful times. I flow with the divine expression that is my life. And now, so it is. And now we have Doug Adams.
Thank you, Vicki.
With our special music.
Today I found a song, or chose a song, by a songwriter from El Paso. You may know her, Monica Gomez. You do? Well, she hasn't been playing and singing that much recently. She's still around, and but this is one of my favorite songs by Monica. It's called In the Wind. Some things change and some things don't. Some hearts mend and some just don't. But it's all right, my friend. We both know how to mend in the wind. Tender willows softly weep, hard familiar ground they sweep, as in the breeze they sway. Old soil blows away in the wind. On smooth waters ships are still, heavy sails hang limp until deep swells break into foam. White caps move us towards home in the wind. And the air does not cast shadows. The hawk soars without a sound, on wings free of resistance to changes on the ground. Purple flowers with yellow eyes gaze at storms in mute surprise. Bright petals flutter by as seeds float to the sky in the wind. Friends we've been and friends we'll be, if we both know we are free to grow and rearrange when there are signs of change in the wind. And the air does not cast shadows. The hawk soars without a sound on wings free of resistance to changes on the ground. Some things change and some things don't. Some hearts mend and some just won't. But we know how to bend. It's all right, my friend. We know how to bend in the wind. In the wind. Thank you, Monica.
That was lovely. I'm glad you brought a new artist here
Monica
with us.
is a great old friend and advised me years ago you should play in churches. So
And
here
here
I
you
am.
are.
Took me a while. But
Here you are. That's wonderful. We'll have our reading. I take it from the 365 Science of Mind book. And I just opened it up, and this is what we get. Omnipresence. The universe is a spiritual system of complete consciousness, entire wholeness, the sum total of which is present everywhere. We are both scientifically and inspirationally, spiritually and philosophically in accord with the great intuitions, the spiritual revelations of all the ages that have always announced that God is over all, in all, through all, and is all. There is not God in something else. There is only God, and God is everything, constituting the only reality to anything that is, proclaiming itself in all things. Therefore, God knows things only as itself. There is intelligence in everything, from the smallest atom to whatever we think of as big, and that intelligence must of necessity respond to us intellectually. Then, automatically, we will have to assume that it can only respond to us at the level of our belief in it. In other words, God is all there is, but to each of us individually, the God that is all there is must be the God believed in. Since there is but one life present everywhere, I must be that life and of it, and it must flow through me. It must be what I am. Therefore, I accept this omnipresence as something real, definite, immediate. At the very center of my own being, I realize the divine presence. At the center of my own consciousness, I recognize a transcendent principle forever animating, sustaining, visualizing, recreating, guiding, directing, inspiring. There is within me that which knows what to do and impels me to act in accord with its perfect law and order and its complete peace. This I accept, and even as I affirm it, I know that this omnipresence is alive and awake and aware within me. And so it is.
What day was that?
This was from March 22nd. Yep. And now, we're very fortunate that the member of our spiritual leadership team that sometimes is south of the border in Mexico happens to be north of the border and is here with us today in Las Cruces. Peggy Shinn has been a practitioner now this year 20 years, and we are so blessed. Yes,
Thank you.
congratulations. We are so blessed to have her part of our team and here with us today to share a message. Peggy.
Thank you. Oops, don't want you to not have, knock your stuff off there. Thank you, Vicki. Yes, I am just barely north of the border. I'm leaving in another week to go back to Mexico to finish up with all the preparations that are still pending for the Convention of the Americas, August 2nd through 6th. You're all invited to consider registering at www.conventionoftheamericas.com. We'll be there from Tuesday afternoon to Saturday morning in beautiful Lake Chapala, and offering people like our spiritual leader, Edward Vilhune, as one of our keynote speakers for the Centers for Spiritual Living, our spiritual leader, and David Bruner, a lot of rock stars from the Centers for Spiritual Living, Science of Mind, New Thought Movement, whatever you want to call us, we're all one, the same thing. So I invite you to come. I think there's a few people from the Center for Spiritual Living here in town that are going to be going, so you could hook up with them and they'll teach you the ropes about how to get across the border to the airport in Juarez and fly down there for just $100 or less. It's pretty good. And our convention is the cheapest one in our movement anywhere, and it includes your meals and hotel, everything. So enough for that shameless plug, right? Thank you. I have to apologize. I'm not only back in the land of allergies, but I've been up in Albuquerque last week and a lot of smoke in the air up there, and coming back down the I-25. Something really got to me on Wednesday when I came back going through Monticello, and I don't seem to be able to quite shake it. So I'm a little hoarse, and I might have to like blow my nose or cough or something. Larry Pass once told me that I suffer from the snifficulties. So I'm in that today. I'll share that with you if any of the rest of you are having allergy concerns. Well, in past talks here, I have been touching on little bits and pieces of the topic that relate to, what we've all been going through in the last few years with COVID and I don't know what to call the rest of it, chaos, politics, and some pain and suffering that all of us have had, because nobody has come through this without losing something. And that loss is out there still, perhaps, in our need to grieve. And you mentioned, Vicki, in your announcements about the channeling class. I had I was not getting a channel in the last week or so, thinking about planning to be here today. I usually get the cosmic download, and I say, okay, God, that's what we're going to talk about. Well, as of Thursday night, still, I didn't have the cosmic download yet. And I went to the channeling workshop. You're calling it workshop, right? And it rocked my world. And it gave me a little bit of food for thought about how this universal spiritual collective, I guess we'd call it maybe, seemed to tune into what some of my issues were that I'm not paying enough attention to. And I realized that I'm kind of in the middle of something, and I thought, what am I doing here? Then the plot method that you're talking about here, I was going through some stuff on downloads in my computer, and I ran across this thing in Spanish on the spiritual bypass and got the cosmic 2x4. That is where I am and what I've been up to, and I thought, well, this is for me to talk about, and maybe it's going to help some of you all too. I don't know, but therein, I think, lies the fact that what came through from that collective channeling for me was that I'm in resistance. I'm in a dense kind of area. I've got actual literal physical pain going on in my shoulder and my neck here on this side. And what up with all that, right? So we have a theme this year in the Center for Spiritual Living in Lake Chapala, where my practitioner's license has been for the last 5-6 years, something like that. And it's called Going Within So We Don't Have to Go Without. That's the theme of what we've been doing. And I started thinking about the fact that maybe I haven't been going within enough, and I'm learning to do these things that some of us have learned to do with the tools and the toolkit we have, and we have all the blessings of this philosophy. And if you're like me, we've been propping up other people who don't have those tools, who don't have the opportunity to understand that they didn't have control to begin with, and maybe being upset about not having control in the last couple of years or so is something we need to have compassion for them about. And as a consequence, for me, at any rate, what I'm coming to understand is that maybe that's kind of exacerbated my tendency anyway to go to work from the spiritual bypass. So what is this, spiritual bypass that I'm referring to? Maybe some of you have heard this term before, maybe some of you have not. But this was a coined term by a psychologist in the 80s named Wendell something or other. I did look it up. I don't remember his name right now. And here's the quote of what he called it. He said, it's a tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to dodge or avoid facing emotional problems, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. John Wellwood, that is his name. He was a Buddhist teacher and a psychotherapist, and he had begun to see in his Buddhist community that maybe there was just a little too much of emphasis on the spiritual aspect of things, at the ignoring of the real world and people's real pain, and how we are actually culturated in our society, aside from the Buddhist teachings, to do this anyway, especially, I think, for women. No offense, guys, but I do think it's more hardwired and hard-fired into us as females, that we got to be the caregivers, the caretakers, the selfless ones, all of that. And so it's about looking at it from the standpoint of science of mind. It came to us from the psychotherapy world, but it came through others. And, it was after the time that Ernest Holmes was writing his works, because he was already on the other side of that border to the world beyond. But in our science of mind environment, I think it's important for us to challenge us with that kind of thing. And I was looking at a couple things of what did Ernest have to say about it. And now if I can find it here in my phone, maybe I'll just have to go with my notes in the order they're in, because it's too skinny on the screen here. So I'll give you an example or two of what I think for me hit home. I was looking at a book by Debbie Ford. Do you guys remember Debbie Ford? And her really strong work that people know is the dark side of the light chasers. But she wrote another book that was called The Secret of the Shadow, because the dark side is about the shadow side, the shadow form of things in our world. We got that terminology from Jung, also out of the world of psychotherapy. But she says that that basically, we have our story that we've worked on, our anger and our inner child and our inner critic. And when that failed, maybe we went to ecstatic dance or universal dances for peace, or we tried visualizing, and we've been affirming, and we chant and we meditate, and we work what we can to try to find a way out of whatever the pain is that's underlying in our subconscious that we haven't quite hit on yet. She said we sought the advice of nutritionists and trainers and life coaches and yoga teachers and gurus, and when those didn't work, we sought out the internist maybe for a prescription for Prozac. That one I did not do, but most of these others I can go through the laundry list. So we cleansed our chakras and sniffed essential oils and sat in front of scented candles to calm our mind, and some of us, soaked in energetically balanced baths while listening to harmonically soothing music, and we burned incense from specially imported places in India, and we put magnets under our pillows and worn our amulets around our necks and maybe mood rings on our fingers, and we handpicked the angel cards or had someone else read our tarot cards. And we've tried volunteering our time so that we could be of service to those that we thought were less well off than we were. And then we've sometimes even tried, switching partners or, get the rich husband or the pretty wife, and none of it worked. At the end of it all, there was still that underlying pain or those behavioral patterns that just weren't being shifted. So why do we even press on? It's not like we're stupid people, doing all these different things and nothing really, not that those didn't serve. I think we all agree that all of that laundry list of things that are part of the new thought activities and process all serve. But if it didn't do the job, then what were we still doing? Why were we still after it? Why didn't we let go of it? Why didn't we give up and say, well, I think my life is just meant to be painful and irrelevant, and I'll just go on and live it, right? I don't think so, because what we have in this room, for sure, I'm certain of that, is we have something that I think is really the impelling thing that was being read by Vicki today, that we're impelled to this search for meaning, this search for enlightenment. So the title of my talk today is "The Spiritual Bypass Equals the Detour on the Path to Enlightenment." And so I'm wanting to talk to you about the spiritual bypass and how and where and what that has to do with our search for enlightenment. So we have this deep longing still that's driving us or impelling us, as she wrote in the reading, to find our way home, to feel that connection. It drives us, some of us to an obsession level sometimes, what we used to call the workshop junkies and those kinds of things, 20 years ago. But there is this vastness of the eternal self that we have some sense is in there or out there or wherever, and we're looking for it. And the idea, I think, is to get beyond our story, that story of we've done all these things, we've had all this, we've had all that. And the way we get beyond it is to go beneath it, because we have that idea, but we don't know how to get there. And the reality is that our mind is what's driving us. That there's this intellectual part that we have the tendency to work from here up, and not feel and not have the emotion that's in the body. And we store all these things and we suppress all these things. And we've learned to, one of the analogies is that we have all this in our subconscious. That's why a lot of these other things haven't revealed it to us, even though we've done all those processes. But we have this need and this longing to belong and to feel connected. So what Holmes, like I said, he never taught anything about spiritual bypass because it wasn't quite the terminology there in his day, except maybe indirectly he has lots of things to say that kind of indirectly hit on it. He says a person in our field, meaning, studying these things like science of mind, would deceive himself if he refused to acknowledge that something might be wrong with the body, the mind, although nothing could be wrong with the spirit. And this would be to say to feel peace when you really don't feel peace, when there is no peace. And we must avoid making such claims. He went on to say that treatment, that's our form of affirmative prayer, talking about treatment in that sense, is not meant to help us avoid our reality. It is explicitly for the purpose of changing the situation from our perspective so that the reality isn't something we think we have to avoid. And unless the situation or the condition that you're treating about, if you're not seeing a shift, and that seeing may be, 3D seeing it, or it may be your change in perspective. The miracle is the change in your perspective about it. He said, but if we're not seeing the situation change from doing the treatment, we've lost our direction. So he goes on in other things to talk about what is enlightenment or what is illumination. And Holmes argues that science of mind is a mystical teaching, that we are there looking for that omnipresent God that Vicki read to us about. Where is it? It's in all, as all, for all, through all, as she was reading to us. And we learned this from Science of Mind, that it's not out there. It's in here. It's an inside-out job, as we say in 12-step. So Ernest wrote, "Science of Mind is a compilation of the great thoughts of the ages and the deep mystical longings of the minds in search of God and the modern approach to a faith that can be demonstrated. We live only because God lives in us." See how your reading was so perfect? That always is. This is the kind of mysticism that we want to create and that we want to believe in, that God that she said is believable to the extent that we believe. That's the God of our understanding. And that we've created our whole movement around it. And he says we can only know the creator of the universe by practice of his presence or its presence. Mysticism is essential in our philosophy, and our philosophy is not that far from the earth. In other words, we don't really want to get to the point where we're so spiritual we're no earthly good, right? That's the spiritual bypass. It is a philosophy where the grass grows, the sun sets. A philosophy that no longer separates the physical from the mental or the emotional or the spiritual, but finds action and reaction as a single actor. This, to me, resonates with the Hindu concept of the object and the subject being one and the same. But in Ernest's world, the illumination or the enlightenment is what we call an individual case, where the Buddhists or the Hindus or the Eastern traditions that we have looked at have an idea of non-dualism, that you're just going to sort of like melt into the cosmic and there's no individualization, or as Ernest would call it, particularization of the you as the personality. But the Enlightenment in Ernest's teachings are, and I just let my phone go to sleep here, sorry, is that mystical teachings affirm the ultimate purpose for life as an individual enlightenment. And he says enlightenment alone can produce our freedom. And he says that it's an experience of complete and permanent cosmic consciousness. The beginning of your reading was about what is the consciousness of the universe. And that consciousness of the universe is that energy that animates behind it all, that is the God in, through, and around, and for all. And that consciousness has to come from the part of the individual, is what Ernest says. I've interrupted myself here, but he says, the experience of a complete and permanent cosmic consciousness on the part of the individual is his definition of enlightenment. I am not the Buddhist at the hot dog stand, make me one with all. We believe that unity and unification is the goal, and it's what we are and who we are, that we all are one. I am you, you are me, we are all that. And yet there is, in this concept that Ernest purports, that enlightenment, that there is this individualization of the cosmic consciousness. We each get our own spiritual awakening at the level that we are awake to it, And it's an enlightenment that leads not only to the full manifestation of the divine individual, each one of us, but will ultimately complete the spiritualization of the planet, of the earth. He stops at the earth, but I think today we're ready to go out, beam me up, Scotty, to the universe and beyond, right? That we want that spiritualization of the material that goes along with the materialization of the spiritual in our 3D world. He says there is within each of us a spirit of importance, which is part of the divine impulse, again, for its expression. The divine impulse and the inner desire to express our life. The desire to do and to achieve more, to be completely happy, prosperous, and good. And if it's part of that eternally progressive spirit of development, the divine impulse, the inherent need to express, the divine impulse is embodied in all life. That is all life because God is all life. All life is God. We choose to thrive, but to do so, we have to be willing to flow into different thinking, different ideas. We have to drop that resistance to get the wings that have no resistance to catch that wind in the song that Doug was talking about in that song. And by the way, in parentheses, on my way back from Albuquerque, I was listening to a very short little playlist that I have on my iPhone, because there's part of the area, where nothing works. And it's Monica Gomez's song, There's Nothing to Forgive. I've always gone back to that song as a mantra for myself, that there is nothing to forgive. And Monica used to come on occasion to the Howling Coyote Coffee House with her buddies from El Paso, Gene Cannon and Glenn Fry. I don't know if you know that cast of characters or not, Doug, but they are singer-songwriters of that same generation as Monica. But she was a busy, newscaster and TV personality, had a lot of things going on in her world, so she didn't make it very often. But every once in a great while, we got to see her in person. So Ernest goes on to say that we exist as part of this life in order for him, for God, it to be able to express itself through us individually. And it is not the destruction of the individual or the personality that we are seeking in our teachings. We are seeking transformation of that expression. And we see ourselves as interconnected with all life and no longer as individuals in that sense, because we're all one in the spirit. But the individualization is going to be there at the level of enlightenment, according to Ernest. There is a point in time, he says, where the supreme moment of realization, where the individual merges with the universe, but not with the loss of his individuality, where a sense of unity of life enters so much into your being that there's no sense of otherness, only the oneness, and limited on the life of totality that it has brought to the point of our consciousness. That is what I take from Ernest's writings as this is how he sees this path of enlightenment for us. That it's a path of transformation to the destination of enlightenment, which we won't know about till, we're on the other side of that border again too. So where's the disconnect? We have all of this spiritual teaching, we have all these tools, we've done all these things in the laundry list that Debbie Ford gave us, and somehow or another we ain't there quite yet. And I believe that the process that is always available to me and to you is the one that needs to be revisited by me in this particular circumstance that I was telling you about earlier. And I offer it to you. I have these little bumper sticker things, and I'm going to share this one with you, that for me, I call it reveal, feel, deal, heal. That's the order that I see the process needs to go in. So this is what I'm revisiting in my own world. And that process allows us to get to another little bumper sticker of mine, which is I've got to eliminate in order to emanate, in order to illuminate. So if I'm going to be the light worker, the dark side part of me is not to be eliminated, but to be shifted, to be revisited and embraced and understood to be the God that is in it and the gift that is there in that for me, and how I can take that to the next level. But so much of this is under the level, it's under the subconscious level, that it is not always that easy to figure it out. And part of it is complicated by something that I call denial. We say in 12-step that we're living on the river, the denial. But the other thing that I've learned from that program too is there's an acronym that can be derived from the word denial. DENIAL. Don't even notice I'm lying. I'm lying to myself when I'm in denial, and I'm lying to others because I'm holding that denial out as some sort of truth that they should be buying into. And I don't know about you guys, but I think we're all better able to see, the speck in the other guy's eye than the log in our own, as the Bible would say, right? And so when it comes time to having to come to understanding of, well, what is my shadow? Where is it? What's in there? What do I need to release? Is really more what it is. It's about the reveal and the feel. It's the feeling of the releasing. Reverend Candy told me once that part of the situation for her. You guys know I'm talking about Reverend Candace Smith Frank. She once told me that she realized after the fact, that part of her problem with her spiritual bypass was holding back all the pain and keeping herself from feeling that pain and allowing herself to grieve or cry over it. And when she first got, well, not when she first got into recovery, but when she had to go back into a relapse situation, that she realized that her fear had been of crying, because she felt like if she ever let the tears flow and if she ever let the cry come out, she'd never quit crying. And she said in that program that she was in, it did take her 6 weeks before she was out of the, got to cry part of it. And I'm thinking this is where each of us in our own world has our own little piece of whatever it is that we're tamping down, consciously or subconsciously, to keep ourselves from losing some control or falling out with someone else or being not what was expected of us. I mean, anything that could be the motivation for it. The core issue almost always is still going to be, I ain't enough. And I ain't never going to be enough, because it's all about the fear. We have the spiritual bypass because we're afraid of something coming up that doesn't look spiritual, doesn't sound spiritual, doesn't feel spiritual, isn't going to be approved by other people as spiritual. So this is what's in the way, though. The spiritual bypass is what's in the way of getting to the next level, because it's the detour on the path. And for me and others like me, perhaps some of you in this room too, sometimes I am so intent on that path of the detour, I didn't get back on the road. I missed a sign or whatever, and I'll keep going straight down the wrong way. I had someone tell me a story the other day, I think it was you, Cleona, maybe, about being so involved in what you were doing that you missed your turn. Well, I did that today. I missed the turn here, and I had to go back around. But it's about not paying enough attention or not focused sometimes on the thing that was at hand, or doing what's in front of me, as we'd say in the 12-step program. So how to get back on the path. That's really what we want to talk about, how to get back on the path. We've talked a lot about how to recognize that you're on the wrong path, or you're on the detour, or you're stuck in the spiritual bypass, or you're stuck in something and you can't figure out what you're stuck in, because you've done all these things that I listed for you in the beginning there, right? And it ain't happening. It hasn't worked, and you're not feeling good yet, and you don't believe you're there. We're not, there is no there. That's part of the problem. And we deceive ourselves into thinking that somehow or another we're going to know about that. But this idea of the shadow work that Debbie Ford put out was where I went with my own thoughts about this that I wanted to share with you. That her book on the dark side of the light chasers was very impactful for me back in the, I guess, the late 90s, early 2000s. When it came out, I remember having to sit in front of the mirror and practically shout to myself, "You are evil." She has great processes in that book, and I want to go back and dig it back out again, and I haven't had time to look for it. I think I still own the book, but I'll find it. Anyway, it was very important, I think, for me in my process to get to the point of, and this is before I became a practitioner, I was in the midst of going through classes, and we were doing the inner child workshops and that kind of stuff over at what was then the Mastery and Life Center. And so these things were starting to pop up for me. She has an analogy that we have these little traumas or these little hurts or these big things that happen in our lives that we at some level have internalized them, or we bypass them entirely. I won't think about that. I won't hear about that. I won't deal with it. That's the sort of the Pollyanna thing. But she calls it equivalent of somebody throws you the beach ball. You get the little problem that happens, a little bump in the road. It's like somebody threw you the beach ball and you're in the water and you push it down in below your subconscious level. Then the next one comes in. Well, you got that one handled, you got two hands, you can hold two of them down. And then another one and another one. And the longer we live and the older we are, and the more life has, as Ernest Hemingway says, broken us. If we haven't learned to heal and be stronger in the broken places, as he talks about in his book, For Whom the Bell Tolls, then we are not going to be able to keep all the beach balls down eventually. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience or watched someone else have it, where eventually you can't keep them all down and something pops up at the least expected moment. And, you're Mel Gibson having made a Christian movie and then being anti-Semitic when you're not drunk. Things happen where what's inside of there, or as Wayne Dyer would say, when you squeeze an orange, what do you get? Orange juice, because that's what's inside. And if we haven't dealt with what's inside, when we get under pressure, when we get squeezed, or when something else new comes up that we're not prepared for, and we haven't quite got our enlightenment level up yet, we are susceptible to all those beach balls. They all come up at once. I thought that was a great analogy that I could picture, that I could share with you. So this all resides in the wounded ego, but it's the subconscious that it's sitting there in. But the wounded ego we're trying to hold all the beach balls down, because we've got to look good, be good, act good, all these things we were taught as kids, and that we continue to run those tapes in our mind about. So how do you know where your shadow is or what it is? Well, I would say the first thing that you look at is, what are you judging? What's the part of you that you're judging, that you're ashamed of, or that you don't want to be who you are? And how you're projecting that outward to what you're judging outside of you. Because we know, you spot it, you got it. If I'm judging somebody or something over there, and this is a part of the sort of spiritual bypass that I think I and probably a bunch of us took on during this COVID thing, because we have the tools, we understand more about what's going on, we got the bigger picture, we got the bigger vision, so we can operate out of that spiritual superiority to have compassion for these poor folks who just haven't quite got it figured out yet, And that's a part of the spiritual bypass too. So we have this situation where it's coming up and we're judging them, we're judging ourselves, because even the positive judgment is a judgment. As Reverend Sandy would say, that part about where you tell yourself, I'm all that in a bag of chips, you're just not going to be truthful about that. That's denial also, whether it's seemingly positive or negative. The fact of the matter is that we need to achieve some level of neutrality, some level of equanimity, perhaps maybe the word. So another way to reveal yourself, what your shadow is, what have you been working on all those years we were doing this, in the litany of things that I read you? What was it you thought you were working on? Relationship or self-esteem, or just needing to have more personal growth, or, somewhere in there, there's a pattern that could be reviewed and revealed as to what was going on, or what happened to trigger the next thing where you had to go out and find the next guru. Those are the things that you can connect the dots with. And if you're in the denial of lying to yourself about what happened or what was going on, you might not have the ability to figure it out unless you tried some of these tools that I'm suggesting about how to figure it out. So there's a pattern showing up, there's a beach ball there. Something is going on that you're not quite in touch with yet. So you begin to find the beach balls and decide, whether you're going to let them go or how you can deal with it, whether you're going to drain the pool. I mean, what can be the way that you could get there with it? So the shadow work that Debbie suggests, that she calls shadow work the work of the heart warrior. It's your heart, but it's all hearts. And to be the warrior, to have the courage, that word courage that has the word heart in from Latin and French in it, is the core of who we are, is where we want to get to. And we want to be honest and open-minded and willing to get to that new level of thinking that Ernest talked about, that I read to you earlier, in order for our lives to flow differently. So you begin to see all the ways that you've been operating, and kind of what your MO has been, or what you've been covering up, or what you've been sitting on or sitting over. And as you come to those realizations, it's about learning to love that, and learning to love yourself, and learning to accept it, and be willing to recognize that possibly, just maybe possibly, you were coping with something or another that came maybe from your childhood, that perhaps was something that you found a way to get yourself to feel better about it, or whatever. It's all about How do we calm ourselves? How do we soothe ourselves sometimes when we're little kids? And then we reach a point where it works till it doesn't work, you know. And we have an opportunity to see, well, maybe that was a coping mechanism that served me then. Maybe it doesn't serve me too well now. But I could be grateful for it and be grateful for my creative mind that thunk it up. And as Reverend Kobe Judah told me one time, what's been thunk can be unthunk. But the reality of it is that that thing is part of who I am. So how do I work with it? How do I, instead of try to, you know, like erase all of that and say it never happened or I'm better than that now or whatever, how can I use it? How can I recognize that there's a piece of that? Because everything serves. So when I have the opportunity to learn finally maybe what it was or what I am doing now, if it's not something that was from the past, what can I do to shift that around? Transform it, transformation, again, so we can stop resisting and start embracing and recognize, you know, that there is a benefit there somewhere. And part of the way that we do this, according to what Debbie suggests in her book, is we journal. We journal every day, and we start out by looking for what do I feel good about myself today about, or, you know, what do I like best about me right now? And start working from that positive side of it so that we don't get all, you know, dragged over and distracted by the other stuff. And when you're journaling, she says, look for and find the magic in whatever it is that's going on for you, that you can see God. You can get the mystic part of it back out there again, where you can be grateful. So it becomes like a gratitude journal at the same time that it becomes more of a anecdotal, you know, story of my life that I'm rewriting here because the story that I've had up to now ain't working no more. So it's, you know, nobody picks up the pen to write your story except you. And all of the crossouts and the edits have to come from you too, in order to get a new story that has maybe a different ending. Maybe will be better, maybe it won't be better. We don't know until we get there, but you know, you have the option of transforming it from, we can't change the past. We can only transform it through our own perspective about it and what we do with the lessons we've learned from it and how do we get to the next level. So that element of the elimination in order to emanate, in order to illuminate, that can come from doing the shadow work, I believe will take me and you closer to that enlightenment that Ernest was talking about and what I read you, so that we can have that cosmic, individual, and collective enlightenment that heals us through spirit and heals the planet along with us. Thank you. Oh yes, affirmative prayer. Sorry. I'm always in the habit of just walking off and having somebody else come up and do that. Well, I'll be somebody else to do it. I'm transforming who I am, right? Okay, so right here, right now, we allow ourselves to be open to the transformation that is that connection with spirit that we're longing for, that we're finding, that we're realizing, that we feel every step of the way as we reveal to ourselves and to others the authenticity of who we are, who we have been, and who we choose to become. And I declare for myself and for all of us here and on Zoom and energetically anywhere in the world, I declare for all of us that we are open and honest and willing to do this work of revelation in order to heal ourselves and to heal the planet, because we are one. Each one of us contributes to that whole. Each one of us has the whole in us. That is the Spirit, the God, that lives its life through us and through each and every one of us. And everything, because it is that God that is in all that we are seeking without recognizing that it is in us, for us, around us, and through us. And we can tap into that power which is stronger than we think we are. That power that is of us and in us, but isn't just us. It is the power that we have at our fingertips, the grace of God. And we allow ourselves to be used by that power, and we allow ourselves to use that power in order to transform our lives, and with our changing, the transformation of the lives of others around us will happen as well. And with great gratitude for this philosophy, these words of Ernest Holmes that I've read this morning, the hope that expires the fear, the healing of the wounded ego, that we will do just like we would heal a cut on our arm. We won't allow it to be ignored. We won't allow it to fester. We won't allow it to be infected. We will recognize that the mind, the body, and the spirit all have health issues from time to time. And we will treat for each of them holistically, with much appreciation for the truth of what this is and the truth that it can be for us in each of our lives. I release these words into the law, letting it go, letting it be, knowing that it is not about getting, it's about the letting. And as they have been spoken, they are moving through us, changing our lives right here and now. And so it is. Amen. Now we have Doug, right? Yes. And Gary, maybe? I don't know. Okay. Barry, I'm sorry. I saw you move and I thought you were getting up too. Barry, sorry.
They tell me of a home far beyond the sky. They tell me of a home far away. They tell me of a home where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Oh, the land of the cloudless day. Oh, the land of the unclouded sky. Oh, they tell me of a land far beyond the skies. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Oh, they tell me of a land where my friends have gone. They tell me of a land far away, where the tree of life eternally blooms and sheds its fragrance on an unclouded day. Oh, the land of the cloudless day. Oh, the land of the unclouded sky. Oh, they tell me of a land where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. They tell me of a land where no storm clouds rise. They tell me of a land far away. The tree of life eternally blooms. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. Oh, the land of the cloudless day. Oh, the land of the unclouded sky. Oh, they tell me of land where no storm clouds rise. Oh, they tell me of an unclouded day. But a little rain would be okay.
Amen to that. Triple digits all week. Woo. Thank you, Peggy. And thank you, Doug,
Thank you.
Barry.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you, all of you, for being here. A round of applause. Okay. We acknowledge and receive our virtual and in-person gifts. We give great thanks for the offerings already given and those that we will be receiving, because we know that giving and receiving are both part of the one flow. We affirm that we are also part of that flow. We bless these gifts and know that they are multiplied throughout our community. And there's a number of folks that have been of service to put on the celebration today, so thank you for serving Wellspring. And lastly, if you'd like to stick around in Zoom to visit or come join us over in the social hall. And if you're able, please stand and we'll read the benediction followed by the congregational song. There we go. Spirit in the midst of us is mighty. Joy, peace, and eternal life are our true nature and flow through us into the world, and so it is.